Hello and welcome to the AMEDD Effect. I'm your host, Will Cunningham. If you are new here, thanks for joining us. We can't wait for you all to hear all of this amazing content we have going on. But before we get started, I need for you all to do a couple of things for me. One, please go like the podcast so you can stay up to date on the latest episodes and release dates. Next, if you have the opportunity, make sure you leave a comment on the episode that you listened to or that you watched and let us know how we're doing. And if you have a question, leave it in the comment section too, so that way we can follow up with you on the following episode. And last but not least, please share the show on your social media channels so that way it can reach people who may also be interested in the amazing opportunities that the U.S. Army has to provide. Now, let's get into the show. Today on the AMEDD Effect Podcast, we have Chaplain Richard Schultz. He is the Deputy Chief and Operations Chaplain for the Chaplain Recruiting Division under the United States Army Medical Recruiting Brigade. Everybody, make sure you all give Chaplain Schultz a warm welcome to the show.
Thanks, Will. Thanks. I appreciate that.
No problem at all. Good afternoon. How's it been going for you today, sir?
It's going great. Life is good.
That's good. That is good. That is great to hear. We're here. First, let me say thank you for joining us on the AMEDD Effect Podcast and telling us about your Army story and how your journey has been as a chaplain in the Army. So, before we get started, could you please give the listeners and the viewers a brief background on who you are and what you have done so far while you've been in the Army?
Yeah, sure. So, as you said, I'm a chaplain in the United States Army. My real name's Richard. I go by Ross. That's because my parents couldn't get along with my name when I was born. So my dad wanted a full family name, Richard Olin. And my mom said, absolutely not. I don't like Richard, so I've been called Ross all my life. It's my initials, so R-O-S. Yeah, I joined the Chaplain Corps in 2011, direct accession into the Army Reserve. Okay. And I've been doing that since then. Been here and there, a couple different places that we'll get into, I'm sure. And but out of Pensacola, Florida, that's where I was born and raised. I went to school up at Concordia University Wisconsin. I'm my denominational background is Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, and so that's one of our universities, one of our schools. I played Division III football there. And then went to seminary straight from there in St. Louis, Missouri, and then the rest is history.
Rest is history right there. So you grew up in Pensacola, Florida. What's life like growing up down there in the beautiful state of Florida for Chaplain Schultz?
Yeah, I love the beach. It's a place to be. Yeah, so I was up in the Panhandle. So Pensacola's up in the Panhandle, and actually you could just about throw a rock into Alabama from the southern part of Alabama.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's where I grew up. In about a 20-minute drive from the beach. It's kind of a weird, at my high school I went to, we had agriculture and FFA, and so we had cows at my school that we actually worked with, and then you could go to the beach, so we were like beach rednecks, Yeah.
So you got a little bit of the best of both worlds, right? Right? Yeah. You can't beat that. Florida is definitely a big state. They're big on football. So when I think of Florida, I always hear about you have the Gators, you have the Seminoles, you have the Hurricanes, and then what is there? Is there another team that I'm missing? Not for sure if it's another team that I'm missing, but you said you play football. Which one of those college teams that you grow up watching or that you were a fan of?
None of those. Yeah. So Roll Tide, baby. Yeah. So I in the Panhandle, you're kind of in the middle of everything, and so yes, there's the Seminoles down the road, but equally to the other distance is LSU. So there's plenty of LSU fans. So I grew up, around people that rooted for Florida teams, but we also had Mississippi State fans, LSU, Alabama, Auburn, even Georgia, You know, I mean, you got to have the Georgia fans, but yeah. So I've always been an Alabama fan. I'm not a newcomer to that whole thing.
Now, after you graduated from high school, you ended up attending Concordia University in Wisconsin. While there, you earned your Bachelor of Arts in Pastoral Ministry with a minor in education. What took you? Did football take you to the school, or was there another mission or another journey that took you there?
So about my junior year of high school, I kind of thought, you know, hey, I think I want to be a pastor.
Okay.
Didn't know what all that meant. I had a really good pastor in my life who mentored me, and he encouraged me. And I just thought, you know what, I think that's what I want to do. So the school up there in Wisconsin has one of the premier what's called pre-seminary or pastoral theology programs. I mean, I studied under some really amazing people at that university. Somebody that translated the Dead Sea Scrolls. Another individual that went on and has done some things kind of with translating Greek texts. Which the New Testament was written in Greek.
Yeah.
And anyway, so that was kind of the primary. I mean, I played Division III football, but it was Division III, so right away we should know that I wasn't like, you know, D1. And Division III, for those who don't know, there's no scholarships in Division III for athletics.
Okay.
So I didn't have a scholarship for that, but I did have a scholarship for going to the pre-seminary program and doing that. So that's kind of what brought me up to Milwaukee. And it was good because that's where I met my wife.
Okay. Okay. So school took you up there.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, good. Good deal. Now, when you got to school there, were you already aware of the opportunities that Army chaplaincy provides?
Absolutely not. Yeah, not even a clue on the radar. Now, growing up in Pensacola, you're in a Navy town, right? And so like the Blue Angels fly out of Pensacola. So I mean, the military was something that I always was around, grew up with. Kind of had a idea that I wanted to serve, but the idea of being a chaplain, I had no idea about in college. Okay, I wish I had, but as far as being a chaplain, but didn't know anything about it till later.
Okay. So now that you are a chaplain, what advice would you give students on what they could be doing while they are to prepare themselves for Army chaplaincy? Because now I know you have individuals like yourself, Chaplain Burns, you all go to the different seminaries, speak to the students, so they are aware of what's going on. So what are some things that you would or advice that you would give them to prepare?
Yeah, so right away, if I'm a junior or senior in undergraduate working on my bachelor's degree, I would say start discerning whether or not ministry is something that you are thinking about. Okay. That's something that you're prayerfully seeking, in whatever your faith group might be. You know, am I being called, if you will, into some level of ministry in which I'm a representative of my faith group in the community. Now, that could be, sometimes different faith groups, we call those pastors, some call it imams, rabbis, all these various types, right? So start thinking through that. Like, is that something I want to be? Right. Clergy. I think that's primary, because that's going to advance you forward in the idea of the call. Like, what am I getting into this for? And I think that's huge. So along with that, if you have an idea or a thought of doing this in the military, then that junior and senior year is the prime time, because then once you get into seminary, now let me just, so I'm calling it seminary. It doesn't have to be seminary. It can be master's degree education towards a theological degree. Okay. So, not every faith group has a seminary by definition or by name. They have like rabbinical school or so on and so forth. Whatever that is, and whatever that master's level education is, while you're there, you can be in the chaplain candidate program and already be in the United States Army Reserve, already receiving time and grade for your rank. You have all the benefits that come along with being in the Army Reserve, like insurance, that's a big one.
Yeah, that's big.
You know, so all those things that come along with it, but you're also actively serving. So you're getting paid for being in the Army Reserve. You're drilling. You're gaining experience. I didn't know any of that whenever I was coming out of college, and I knew I was already going to go to seminary. So I could have spent that summer between college and seminary going to what we called Shibboleth, the Chaplain Basic Officer Leadership course. Got that under my belt, and then been going through seminary and gaining experience in the military and time in service. So I would say, one, discern the calling, discern if the ministry is something that you want to be doing, and then number two, if that is, and you're going to go on to that next level of education, start exploring the chaplain candidate program from day one. You have 6 years to serve in the chaplain candidate program, and after those 6 years, then you come on as a full-blown chaplain.
Okay. Now, being a Army chaplain is an incredible, rewarding job. You get to provide spiritual support and guidance to those in need, often during difficult times. For 13 years, you served as a civilian pastor. 9 years as a senior pastor at Emmanuel Lutheran Church in Freeport, Illinois, and then for 4 years, you served as the senior pastor at Our Savior Lutheran Church in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And then in 2011, that's when you came on board and you joined the Army Reserves as a chaplain. What drew you to the U.S. Army, and how did a day in the life as an Army chaplain differ from a civilian?
Yeah, so just a couple corrections too, just in case anybody's listening, right? You got to always be careful, right? So I was the associate pastor first at Emmanuel, and then became senior pastor along that time. And then I was an associate pastor at Our Savior in Green Bay. Probably not a big deal, but just to be
still just to make sure that it's correct. Yes, I understand.
But yeah, so the life as a pastor is it's interesting. It's a rewarding experience. I would say as a pastor, what I was doing day to day, preparing for different Bible studies, going to different groups within the church, visiting people in the hospital, all of those things. And so and I think this is one of the things that's probably always asked. What's the life like for a chaplain in the active force? And it's probably a lot like that in a lot of ways. Now, we could get into all the staff work and being on a staff of an Army unit that has its own kind of particulars. But from the pastoral side, much the same on the active component. Now on the reserve component, right? So I'm in the church, pastor all week, and then on the weekend, the particular weekend for the reserve drill days, I go up to my unit, which my first unit was in Madison, Wisconsin. And that was a combat stress control unit. And so my daily duties there were really just, it sounds so simple, right? Just be where the soldiers are, be where they are. But that's really what it was. For me at that point, at that early part of my career as a chaplain, it was just be next to wherever everybody else is, try to do what they're doing. Like if we're putting up tents, we were putting up tents one day in the heat. All right, I'm out there putting up tents,
helping put some tents up.
I mean, that's what it is. And so you're just there, and you're kind of earning that respect. And then conversations just come. They either come that are very informal, talking about whatever, or you get into some really deep conversations where the counseling and those types of things. So I think the big difference between the two, between being a pastor in a church and being a chaplain in the Army, is the people in your church generally know what we all should believe together. It's not always that we all believe the same thing, right? But we at least know, like, this is what we should believe, and we're trying to work that out individually. In the Army, we have a lot of different people coming from a lot of different backgrounds, coming from a lot of different cultural upbringings, different American cultures and different world cultures. People coming into this thing, different beliefs. Different understandings about life, even sometimes about morals. And so that's the big difference is you have all these different people. So now, you are a part of that difference, right? A part of that makeup that makes the Army so awesome, that we're not just a collective of people who are all trying to believe the same thing.
Right.
We're actually a bunch of people trying to figure out the world, right? And having conversations that are important because the rest of the world are having the same conversations. Right. And so you get to be a part of that.
Yeah. So would you say that some of those things come down to interpretation, because people are going to interpret things that they read and that they see and that they hear differently?
Yeah, I mean, if you set two people down and you watch the same news cast, right? Those two people might take away something totally different from that same thing, right? Now we could probably get into like all the biblical, interpretations and what people think of the scriptures and or their sacred text. But I think it really comes into, we have a nation that continuously seeks to improve the individual liberty, right? That you have an individual liberty to be the person who you are and who you want to be. There might be things that you do that I disagree with, wait a minute, but this is what we do in the military. We defend the right to live in a society that says you have the right to be the person you want to be. And we can have discussions and disagreements and talks about different things. And I understand in the political sphere that gets, that sometimes gets dicey. Yeah. But how we see the world brings about, and that diversity in that brings about so much more benefits to what this whole enterprise of the Army is all about. So, yeah, I mean, there's interpretations and all of those, but when it comes to being a chaplain, it's really, I'm not going to set aside who I am. I can't do that. Nobody can. Right. Nor should you, right? Right. So, but what I am going to do is present myself in a respectful manner to learn who somebody else is. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, definitely. That definitely makes sense. And I think that if you are willing and open to sit down and hear and put yourself in that individual's shoes, then you will be able to learn a lot more and move around. That's the reason why I always liked growing up in that military setting, because of that. Because, like you said, it's so diverse. So now, earlier you spoke about the Chaplain Basic Officer Leader course. When you attended, talk about some of the lessons that you learned from the course, and how those lessons have helped you on your journey as a chaplain.
So I think right away to that question, what I want to reinforce is the Chaplain Basic Officer Leadership course is teaching a clergy member how to do what they do in the Army. That's key. And I can't drive that home. And that goes back to my point about being, discerning the call, discerning whether or not like being a part of the clergy, being a minister, and that is something I want to be, because what's expected is that within your faith tradition, you have learned and grasped those things that are important to what you do as a clergy member within that faith tradition, right? So when I went to seminary, I learned a lot about what it means to be a pastor. Okay. And how to be a pastor within a Lutheran congregation. So now what Chabolic does is they say, we're gonna let you do that, but we're gonna teach you how to go about the right process of doing that in the Army, right? Because we don't want you to mess this one up, right? So that's the key, right? So you are called to be, or you are brought into the Army, endorsed by your faith group, to be a representative of that faith group in the Army, to bring ministry to those who are in that same body, if you will, same tribe, but to those who are not, you are also equally responsible for ensuring that they have the equal opportunity to worship as they see fit, as those people or whoever that might be sees fit, whatever their tradition is. I can't do what that faith tradition is, but I need to make sure that that they have the opportunity.
Okay.
All right. So there's as the Army is, there's processes and ways to get that done. And so that's what Chabolik tries to teach you.
Okay.
And so that was the big thing that and honestly, so beyond that, in 2011, we were still we were still in Iraq at the time. We had a lot of veterans who had been downrange. And so a lot of our training at the time was built around, that kind of emphasis.
Yeah.
And what that, what the world was like at the time.
Right.
And so, so we got out and did the Army thing that you run, you do push-ups and sit-ups.
Stay in shape.
Yeah, you do all that good stuff, and then you go, and do a classroom setting and learn kind of all those processes too.
Now, as you have been on your journey as a chaplain, whenever you come to any roadblocks or any difficult situations that you run into, do you reflect back or do you refer back to some of those lessons and those teachings that you learned while taking that course?
So I don't want to devalidate Chabolik. Chabolik's an amazing event, and it's always Chabolik falls underneath or within the United States Army Institute for Religious Leadership, underneath the Religious Leadership Academy, and that's a training and doctrine command organization. So I know that there's going to be people out there like, oh my goodness, he just left me. But I'll just say this, and we all know this, that the Army does a really good job of making sure that we are documenting and training, not just to standard, but for purpose. And so that's what Training and Doctrine Command TRADOC does. So everything that they teach is important, and it has a purpose behind it. Sometimes those things don't always they don't always meet themselves in reality, and so that's why the Army teaches creative thinking and critical thinking. Like we can't give you every single answer to every single situation. Right. So yes, I go back and I think about some of the experiences with Chabolik, but honestly, the biggest piece and the most important thing I could say is finding, and well, not just finding, but reaching out to more senior chaplains and always asking questions. Here's my situation. Here's my concern. Either what would you do, or what do you think I should do? And I mean, I've never gone wrong with that, right? Always just because you're building on the experience of others, which is what Chabolik is seeking to do. But sometimes, you're just engaging. You're not alone. You're not in isolation. You're not just this person who's been put into a unit that you have no other people that you can reach out to.
Right.
And I'll tell you what, Will, some of the best experiences I've had is being in units where I've been around some amazing leaders, right? Like one of my units, the commander was in his civilian role, a senior level person for PayPal.
Oh wow!
Right, and so like I had FBI agents, Secret Service agents. I mean, the list goes on. But these people are in different settings, bringing different levels of leadership, and so that's the other piece, right? So I've never come across something where it's like it's insurmountable. I don't know what to do, because I reach out to these people who are just a world of knowledge, right? And just listen and learn and grow.
So pretty much education is the best teacher, or experience, not education, experience is the best teacher.
Oh yeah.
So having that experience definitely will help. And talking to somebody who has already dealt with that would help too. So good. Now, Chaplain Schultz, in 2001, your first assignment was with the 467th Combat Operational Stress Control Detachment in Madison, Wisconsin, which you spoke about earlier. Then you were a part of the 646th Regional Support Group as the battalion chaplain for the
687th.
For the 687th Combat Sustainment and Support Battalion, along with the 103rd Chaplain Detachment.
Yep.
When you were a part of these, what we call them, formations or units?
Units, yeah.
When you were part of these units, how many soldiers were you responsible to provide spiritual guidance to. And how long did it take for you to transition from being a civilian pastor to a Army chaplain?
Yeah, so right away, my first unit, the 467 Combat Stress Control Detachment, only about 40 total soldiers in that detachment. Now, we fell underneath, that detachment falls underneath a larger medical unit called a CASH, a Combat Support Hospital.
Okay.
And so we were just a detachment of that, specifically outfitted with basically components to bring people back into the fight. So combating operational stress, whether that be traumatic event management or things like that. Now that unit was one of the units when they deployed in 2009. They were at Fort Hood in November of 2009, and our unit lost 3 soldiers to that shooting in 2009 at Fort Hood.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and so as a chaplain, being assigned to that unit, you know, I was trying to figure out how are we going to get these people back together, you know, build trust. And so that was extremely challenging, but extremely rewarding. And the people that I met and the soldiers that I was a chaplain to at that time have been, I mean, the impact that they had on my life was huge. So transitioning from a pastor into that role was, it was challenging, but it made me think more, right? It made me have to come out of like a normal, you know, I can get up, I can do the same thing every day, or I can have to think about who I am and what value I can offer to these individuals,
right,
to these folks, these wonderful people. So anyway, so that was about 40 people, a great experience. The 646 Regional Support Group, that was about 150. The battalion was about 100. And so each one of those, you know, actually the whole battalion itself was over 1,000. It was about 1,200 soldiers all across the state of Wisconsin and one unit in Illinois. So that was a lot more challenging.
Right. That's
the 103rd Chaplain Detachment. It was just me and my chaplain assistant, and then that was the unit that I got deployed with. Okay. Right. So being chaplain detachments are unique. We don't have enough time to get into all those things.
Okay.
But they are fun. So if you have a person if you're out there and you're watching, and you're looking at becoming a chaplain in the United States Army Reserve, I'm telling you, the chaplain detachment is where it's at. Some people might tell you differently, but I think it was one of the most rewarding positions I've had, and it was definitely a good experience. And they're built basically as augmented units to go and support, you know, the operational force somewhere deployed.
Right.
And you can be inserted anywhere, right? That's kind of how they're built.
Okay. And I stated earlier that I felt like the Army or just the military in general is like a melting pot because it's so diverse. Now, and you may have spoke on this a little bit earlier, but I want to ask you again. Since you have been serving, what has your experience been like providing spiritual care to individuals from different faith backgrounds?
Yeah, so I think one of the things, it's really easy to live in your own world, right? And defend yourself to yourself. It's a whole nother thing to be around different groups of people,
right?
To be convicted of your own beliefs, but then to communicate those beliefs that are, one, respectful, but that are thoughtful. So I think that's what the Army has done for me, and what being around different folks, like one of the questions I get all the time is, are you able to be true to your faith, you know, in this world, or in the Army? You know, and I get there's a lot of assumptions out there about the Army or about the political environment. You know, I have never been put in a position where I myself couldn't think through who I am, who I am true to, and then how do I also convey who I am in a respectful manner to somebody who who's not coming from where I'm coming from.
Right.
So I think what has happened is it's only allowed me to better know myself and to better be able to think through all of the things that are important to me. Right? I can defend myself to myself. I can tell myself how great I am or how awesome my theology is. Right? But whenever I'm encountering somebody else who's different from me, now all of a sudden I have to understand where they're coming from, and then really, be more thoughtful and more academic in a way. Mm-hmm. Like, it has caused me to go into books that I might not have ever gone into, and to discover and know more, so that I can be able to convey what I really mean. Because I can give blanket answers, just kind of talk ethereal stuff, where I can get really, let's get real and let's talk and let's figure each other out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I've never had an issue from the standpoint if anybody's ever worried about that. I've never ran into that. I've only been blessed by other people trying to understand who they are, and frankly, what their story is, what their background is, where they come from. That kind of stuff.
So you probably answered my next question, which was, have you ever encountered a individual or a situation where you felt uncomfortable due to a person or a soldier's beliefs or values?
Never because of their beliefs or values, but definitely uncomfortable because they were trying to figure out who I was. All right. So I mean, let's just be real. Religion as it is it's a difficult animal.
All right.
Period.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so religion in the sense of religious beliefs come with all kind of mystery and all kind of, what does this person think? What being in the sky, or what thing do they believe in, and how does that informing their sense of reality? Mm-hmm. And so you double that on top of what people assume of, or what people think of, clergy in these different religions, right? So, and stigmas and things like that. So, you can walk around with a chip on your shoulder and think that you have something to prove, or you can just be who you are and just let others, build that trust in you. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there have been soldiers that were maybe difficult or didn't necessarily know how to take me or whatever. But I don't think that I've ever left a unit where there was a soldier who still, at least wouldn't talk to me.
Right.
And I'll just give you an example. I had one soldier that didn't really give me the time of day. But then it came down where this was a Jewish soldier, and he needed a document that I needed to write. And so I kind of, I said, hey, let's get this done. Let's do this. Let's do what we need to get done so that you can have this. And anyway, got it for him, and everything worked out. And I think, just knowing that I was there in that way, in a simple way, right? I'm not getting too specific with it, and I hope that's okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's fine. Yes.
But
for sure.
But yeah, I mean, that I think you're always going to run into those types of things. There's going to be places in life where people, might want to try to give you a hard time, but that's anywhere,
Yeah, that it comes with it. Anywhere you go, whether that's in a military setting or corporate setting, whatever it may be.
Yeah, wherever. Yeah. So just be true to who you are and be respectful.
Soldiers, their family members, or people in general, they deal with the valleys and peaks of life on a daily basis. How do you approach sensitive topics such as death and grief in a pastoral setting?
Yeah, wow, that's a really good. Well, that's probably one of the I'm gonna tear up a little bit. I think, but yeah, let me step back a little and say this. We're in a time right now at the recording of this where I think the world is trying to figure out where things are at, and we just lost 3 soldiers over in Jordan.
Yeah.
That's really tough. But at the same time, I want to commend anybody who's watching this on that what's called a forward operating base. On that FOB, there were medical personnel who were in the right place at the right time to save lives.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is we're all doing here. Whether it's medical personnel or in our case chaplains, it is finding people who are passionate about life,
right,
and about saving life.
Mm-hmm.
And those people who are passionate are the people that the Army needs, because it's those people who are going to care and be at the right place at the right time to save life. Right? That's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And from my perspective as a chaplain, I'm not down, putting people back together, but I've been in those places where I've been right next to the doctor, right, holding the person's hand while they're being worked on. All right. And so those are tough moments. But here's the reality that I don't care what your religion is, we all know, right? Death is out there for all of us.
Right.
Right. Once you grasp that, right, that's out there. Am I going to run away from it? Or am I going to say, it's there, and then have meaning beyond it, the meaning of my life? And so when I talk about these things, it a lot of times it centers around legacy. Like, you have to realize that in your life, you're building a legacy as you live it.
Mm-hmm.
And as you live that life, you're not going to be defined by how you die, but in what way you live that life. One of the senior folks here at the MRB always says, how you doing your dash, and what she means by that is that dash between the two dates of the day you were born and the day you die.
Right.
So I think there's that. There's another thing you talked about peaks and valleys. When I describe the life of, well, at least in my faith tradition, but I think you could really think about this in anybody's life. Each of our individual lives is made up of times that we have great moments and we have very difficult moments. And we can look at that as always trying to climb a mountaintop and, going up and down and up and down. But I think the image of, do you know what spelunking is?
I've heard of it, but I'm not 100% sure if I know exactly.
So it's caving. It's
Okay.
going into a cave on your belly.
Okay.
Right. So a lot of times where, there's nobody's been before, or you're crawling through and you're getting to different places, and you have your light on your head, and so you're continuously crawling, and you're crawling through these crevices, and you're getting into all these places, and then what you're ultimately doing because of your presence is you're shining light where there hasn't been light before. And I think if people thought about that in their life, not so much worried about looking at death, but in my life, I get to shine light into places that there might not have been light before,
Mm-hmm.
and to bring, whether you want to say a witness or a word of hope into somebody else's dark space. Right. And so I think that's the most important thing, is how are we doing that? Mm-hmm. And talking about, when you get into those terrible situations of death, how, focusing on how we're living our life. And not in a, not am I always doing the right thing? Although that's certainly important, but how am I impacting others?
Mm-hmm.
It's not just me on this big world.
Right.
There's a lot of other people, right? And I just want to circle back to that, because I think that's so important. This organization and what it is we do and what it is we're looking for are people that are passionate about saving life. And if you're passionate about saving life and about sustaining life, whether that's the physical life in the medical field or the spiritual life in the chaplain corps,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this place, this work is for you, because I can guarantee you will be in places that will save a person's life, and then they will get to go home. And that's so important.
Let's give a round of applause for Chaplain Schultz for being there for soldiers and their family members during the good times and the bad times, you guys. What do you think are the most important qualities of a successful chaplain?
So, number one, discerning the call. Your faith tradition will inform what that means. Your faith tradition. So I can talk to you about my faith tradition till I'm, blue in the face about what it means for me. But I think your faith tradition will identify that you have discerned that you are being called into this ministry to serve others, not to be served, not to receive accolades, but to serve others, in all facets of life, right? So that's a quality that I think is primary. The other one, and this is probably one that some people might not have on their minds, but I think you can cultivate over time, and that is being a good. We talk about it in the Army terms of being a good staff officer. But I think if we were to frame that from just a generality, being a good planner, it's one thing to come into this field and try to be around all the people and do all those things. That's good. But I think it takes good planning and integration of that plan into a much bigger plan. That's huge. So if you can do those two things, if you can discern your call and know why you're doing what you're doing, and then effectively plan, effectively take that calling and put it into practice through intentionality, right? Being intentional with it, I think you're going to succeed. You're going to do all right. There's going to be challenges, but that's huge, right? And so, I think discerning of the call and being an intentional planner of how you're going to do that.
What is the one saying that they say? Proper planning prevents poor performance.
Exactly.
Planning. I get it.
And Will, you know this to be true in your role and what we do here, right? Like none of this comes to fruition without kind of forward thinking and planning, and that's just part of it.
Yes, 100%. 100%. Earlier, you spoke about being deployed when you were with the 103rd Chaplain Detachment. You all went over to Kuwait. Talk about your deployment and how life of a chaplain differed while providing spiritual care in a deployed setting.
Yeah. So when I was there, I was attached to what's called ASG Kuwait, Area Support Group Kuwait, and then put in at Camp Buehring. And then I had several units that I oversaw and was a chaplain to. So I had an EOD, that's the Explosive Ordnance unit. I had an Army dive unit. Did you know we have an Army dive?
I didn't know that.
These dudes were, that was great. So I got to go swimming with them in the, whether you want to call it the Arabian Gulf or the Persian Gulf. We were like swimming out there, with the masks and everything. And that was so much fun. So I had, but their mission was, they also had missions up in Iraq as well.
Okay.
And so did EOD. I had a chemical, like a CBurn, for decontamination. I had that unit, and then I had the unit that was assigned directly there to Camp Buehring. And so this was later. It was in 2016. So during kind of the ISIS campaign, a lot of the missions were kind of coming out of Kuwait up into Iraq and doing different things. My role as a chaplain then was interesting because I kind of ministered to all those units. I was also the de facto chaplain to a basic leadership course that we had, so we would have units or soldiers come through that course downrange.
Okay.
And then I went forward into Iraq and saw people there as well. It was 100% going all the time, and then trying to find those moments of where can I be alone for a minute, and then kind of regain myself, and then go back and do what I can do. Once you get into the groove of a deployment, it's kind of repetitive. You know your battle rhythm, as they say. You know what you have to do. And you just you wake up and you go. So for me, I think as I alluded before, there were some different situations that kind of knock you off your feet for a minute, and you're put into you know, a different mode, and you're taking care of situations as they arise. But you know what? You've been put in that place for the right time and for such a time as this. And it's not just, and this is key to this whole world and to chaplaincy. It's not just the people who need attention, who their life is being saved. Mm-hmm. It's after that too. Right. So it's being there with those people who did everything they could, you know, and gave everything that they could to try to save a life. Mm-hmm. Which doesn't always work out. Right. You know, and these medical professionals, the work they do, the study they put in, I know we're here for chaplaincy, but I know we're gonna have some medical people listening to this too. But right. you know, you folks that are out there and you're dedicated to your study right now, you know, that study is so important, because when that critical moment happens and you're the person who's been put in place, wherever that might be, whether that's in the Army or elsewhere, you are so important. And I think it's important to always know in life, we don't always succeed at everything we do, and there's certain things that we can't prevent, right? We can't save every life. Mm-hmm. But if I know that I've done everything possible and everything I've done has led to this moment, then I lean back on that redemptive forgiveness and the support of other people that are around me, mm-hmm. that lift me up and that prepare me for the next person. Because what I learned in this is what I'm going to apply in something else.
Something there, yeah, I agree. Yeah, I understand that 100%. So you are a part of the Army chaplaincy. You also have religious affairs specialists. Mm-hmm. How do they help you in a normal setting and also in a deployed setting?
So in the Army, we are considered a unit ministry team, right? And so that team is vital in, you know, the chaplain is the individual who's been put into place as the clergy member to provide that specific, you know, religious care. But the religious affairs specialist, or the religious affairs NCO, is the person who's in place to be able to sustain and help with that planning process, by the way, that over time, right? So that takes on a various kind of faces, right? In some cases, it just might mean, I shouldn't say just might, it may mean setting up for chapel services and making sure that everything is ready to go, start to finish, mm-hmm. right, on everything that is. It might be kind of like if you're in the office and all of the office times, securing those appointments, that kind of stuff. And if you're downrange, that's the person also, I don't know if you want to get into this, but that's the person who's carrying the weapon.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Because the chaplain doesn't carry a weapon.
Doesn't carry the weapon,
you know?
Right.
So that's the person who's maintaining personnel security.
Okay.
For the team. Okay. Right. And making sure that the chaplain is able to do what they need to do, and then, you know, is taken care of. So
let's give it up to our religious affairs specialists too.
Bet.
Let's go ahead and give them a round of applause, you guys.
Yeah.
Now, being deployed could be a stressful situation. Some people like it, some people don't like it. Talk about your likes or dislikes being deployed, if there are any.
So, any dislikes I have are going to be trite. Talk about trying to get away. So when you're deployed, you're often given what's called a CHU, a containerized housing unit. Mm-hmm. And it depends on the number of people that are in the place that you're in, how many people might live in that unit. And this is a deployment that's already kind of understeady. There are other deployments where you're not given that. You're sleeping in the dirt, you know. Don't let that be afraid. You know, don't be afraid of that, anybody. It's fun too. But I had a CHU mate, you know, and his name's Bobby. Bobby was great. I wish I could have been by myself sometimes, just to have, you know, just to be like, I don't want to answer any questions. You know, I just need to decompress. So that's not a big deal. Mm-hmm. I don't think there was. You're away from family,
right?
So is everybody else. You know, I think that gets back to realizing you're not alone, mm-hmm. right? You're not alone, right? So I might have family issues. I mean, when I was deployed, I think the the water heater went out, the garage door broke. You know, I mean, so my wonderful wife at home is taking care of all these things, and I'm trying to figure out, you know, and I'm far away. So, yeah, it was what it was. That's not always, those aren't fun times, but those make great stories down the road. You know, what I did like, so Christmas, you know, was a wonderful service. We had this, we actually put together this, so in the Army, especially on installations, you'll have different chapels, different faith groups. And so what we did is we brought everybody together within what they were comfortable with. And we had this one big celebration. So we didn't have a worship service in this sense. Just want to be careful. It wasn't a worship service, but we allowed for the opportunity for these different chapel services, these different talented people to present, you know, their way of celebrating this time, you know, each individually. It was great. It was really cool. So we had that was a really awesome thing. Yeah, I mean, I got to see, you know, a lot of sand, you know, but the skies, you know, I mean, when it gets dark at night and you know, just the stars that you see out there. So yeah, there were some really great moments on deployment as well.
One of the things that threw me for a loop, I spoke to a couple of guys and they told me about the winter and how cold it gets. And I never would have imagined that it was like that.
Cold and wet, depending on, you know, so once February rolled around, for whatever reason, it was, the rain started, you know, yeah, it was, it got pretty cold at night, especially.
You spoke about your wife, and you being deployed. As a father and as a husband with 2 children, how did you and your family deal with you being away from home?
Yeah, so a lot of communication on the front end. And this is one of the things that the chaplain seeks to do, is to try to help soldiers navigate this before we go on deployments, so that we're ready, and then we can do the job we need to do that our nation has given us to do. So a lot of communication on the front end, a lot of, you know, walking through just simple stuff, you know, like who do you call when the water heater goes out? But also, you know, keeping those things magical that you can. So depends on the deployment and it depends on where you go, but in some cases right now, you still have access to to Wi-Fi and to communication systems that you can make those phone calls. But I'm going to tell you, written letters, you know, when I would get like a package from my wife, it meant the world. Right. And then same thing with my family, the rest of my family, but for my wife. And then she did so many great things to keep my daughter involved in that. And when I was deployed, I only had the one daughter at that time. And then other daughter came later. So yeah, I mean that's key is I think the more people, it kind of goes back to your question about death. It's out there, right? Let's not treat it like something that we're trying to stay away from, but something that we can always be prepared for. Right. And so in my family, you know, we're not always, you know, just not talking about deployment. We know that it could be out there. So we're just constantly communicating those things that we need to with each other. Some mundane, simple, like, you know, how to do this stuff, and some of the more, you know, romantic stuff.
Right. Yeah, I understand. From 2021 to 2022, you had the opportunity to serve as the operations officer at the United States Army Institute for Religious Leadership in Fort Jackson, South Carolina. How did this opportunity land in your lap? And when you were informed about this next mission, what type of emotions did you feel?
So as a pastor, I was a full-time pastor and reserve chaplain, and the opportunity was, you know, kind of a phone call. We've got this this opportunity, this job. It had not been filled ever before, so it was brand new.
New position.
Yeah, it's what they call ADOS, so active duty operational support, and it's a long-term position that is made and funded, and then reservists can do. And it's not, I mean, obviously there's all kinds of different ADOS positions that the active duty puts together, of various kinds, all across the Army. And so this one just it was offered to me, and it was a big leap of faith, because it meant I needed to resign from my position at the church.
Okay.
Not knowing what would happen after that position was complete, right? So you're only kind of offered it guaranteed for a year.
Okay.
And it, a lot of times they'll carry on, but you hope you're going to do a good job and they're going to want you to stay. That's one thing. I will say about the position itself, it was just a dynamite opportunity to be in kind of a different capacity than I have as a chaplain. It put me in an operations setting where I'm really looking at like operations. You can talk about that planning stuff,
right? Operations
orders, calendars, all the stuff that that operations folks do.
Okay.
So that's kind of what I was doing there. But it was a leap of faith. And then when about this time, 2022, I was offered what's called an AGR position, Active Guard and Reserve.
Okay.
And said, hey, we'd like to, hire you on AGR, so full time, indefinitely, basically, and send you to Fort Knox to the Medical Recruiting Brigade, and work in chaplain recruiting. So I was like, all right, outstanding, So it all worked out. It's been good.
Worked out. So after that happened and you became to AGR, you came here where you are currently the Deputy Chief and Operations Chaplain. Talk about what you currently do in this position and how the mission differs from what you have done in the past.
So we have a term in the chaplain corps for this level of position. It's called the AMEDD ministry. So it's administration. This is, it's a lot of, it's heavy on that part, right? I'm not right now in the capacity that I'm in. I'm not doing a whole lot of counselings and leading worship services. Although in my own faith community, my church, my local church, I do. In fact, I'm leading a Bible study right now. I'm in a small group, and then I about once a quarter I lead worship services at my local church.
Okay.
But so the position I'm in here is very much administrative. I'm all the packets that are put together for applicants seeking to become a chaplain, they all come up through my office.
Okay.
And so I'm just doing the administrative stuff, all the boring stuff along those lines of all those packets coming in and making sure that everything's good to go and people can make it to the board to become a chaplain in the United States Army.
Now, working within the recruiting portion of chaplain or Army chaplaincy, I noticed that you went out with Chaplain Burns not too long ago to an event where you all had the opportunity to speak to some students who may or may not want to come and do their job in the Army. How often do you go out to those type of events and speak to the students? Not speak to the students, but be more hands-on with that in that type of situation.
For me, that was the first time.
Okay.
And it doesn't happen often because my job is here and in that way. Now, the reason I went to that event, that specific event, is because that was one of the two seminaries for my church body. We have two seminaries, one in St. Louis and one in Fort Wayne. And so went over there for that what's called the symposia. It's a big theological, people write papers and then present those papers, and then there's discussion on those papers. I mean, that's kind of what it is. And so they would probably not like it if I described it like that, but it's very rich in theology and very good experience. So that was actually an amazing experience for me to get out there and kind of be on the ground with what our recruiters are doing and the hard work that they're putting in to try to get out there and tell the Army story, tell people about what it is to be a chaplain. And it was an event like that back in 2009 that kind of tagged me on the shoulder and said, hey, have you ever thought about this? And I was like, sure, let's give it a shot, and here we are.
Okay, good. That's good to hear. That is definitely good to hear. So speaking about the opportunities that Army chaplaincy provides, like for instance, like Chaplain Torres, Chaplain Burns, when they go out and they talk about all of these different opportunities. Inform listeners or viewers who may be potential candidates of a few of the opportunities that are available out there.
Yeah, so let's get into it. So there's one that you can do on the civilian side that you can also do on the Army side, and you can do it full time or even part time, and it's called clinical pastoral education. Usually held at hospitals. It's an education that helps advance your ability to bring pastoral care in the clinical setting, in like a hospital or hospice care, and so there's 4 components of that, and it's an awesome opportunity for those who are able to do that.
Okay.
There's also family life chaplaincy, and that's heavy on counseling within family life, and so that's a great opportunity. There's also ongoing study. I know a chaplain that got assigned to the JAG schoolhouse, the Army lawyer schoolhouse, and he went to school to learn and to get a degree in ethics, and now is the ethics teacher for lawyers in the Army, right? So there's things like that. I mean, there's opportunities galore when it comes to the different kinds of niches that you can find while you're serving as an Army chaplain.
Now, well, I guess this probably does. You probably haven't done this because you went to your first kind of recruiting event with Chaplain Burns, but I was going to ask you, when talking to students or maybe even just talking to regular people, what are some misconceptions about the Army that you often have to debunk?
I think the primary question out there right now is, I don't think we should shy away from it. There is a strain in what is called the civil-military relationship. All right, and there's a lot of books. So if you're actually an interested person and you want to look up civil-military, just look up that and look up civil-military relationships. And there's some great content out there, both historically and now, about where things are at. And I think it would be enlightening for people to really understand what it is that the Army does. And I think this is probably one of the biggest misconceptions overall, and that is that the Army is a profession that is there to serve the civilian population. That is a tenet of the American understanding. We are I guess you might say owned and operated. We are overseen by civilians, right? And that's important for us. That's important for the way that we do what we do in the profession of arms, as it's called in the military. So, that's seen very, you see that in the Secretary of Defense, right? That's a civilian position. The Secretary of the Army, that's a civilian position. The President of the United States, civilian in that capacity, right? And then we have wonderful people that we work with in the military that are civilians, right? That are government employees that work with us, right? And they are often the continuity in all of these units that are, I'm going to go somewhere else, right? But the folks like yourself and others who are in our units are going to stay and keep providing that continuity.
Right.
So that civilian control is fundamental. It's huge. And so I think you take that alongside with, people's questions about, is the Army, doing this or doing that? I think the reality is as we go about figuring out life, and the American culture and the American experience continues to grow and to discover each other, we're going to be doing the same thing because that's what our civilian population is doing.
Right.
Now, the other side of it is we are going to be dedicated and focused on doing what it is that the civilian population wants us to do, and that's to keep America safe. So while all this other stuff, and discussions and figuring things out, all that might be seen, I think the biggest thing for people to understand is that we are professionals and we are ruthlessly honing our skills at protecting America. That's what we do, and that's what we are darn good at.
Definitely good at that. Definitely good at it. How does Chaplain Schultz stay informed on current events and changes in the field of chaplaincy?
In the field of chaplaincy?
Yes.
So I think that's multifaceted.
Okay.
All right. So I think it's important to take what I know and do as a chaplain and inform that into the environment. Mm-hmm. So on the one hand, I'm very in tune to my denomination, which is the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, and to journals and publications that keep up my theology. Like I said, I also am involved in my church and just keeping up that practice to make sure that, I'm in my sacred text and understanding what I understand of reality to be and what God has said, and informing that. But I'm also looking at other things that are extremely important, especially, and we could do a whole nother podcast about this, by the way, on matters of just war theory, ethics, military ethics, how we employ the art of the military and military operations, and thinking of that from an ethical perspective. All right. So in order to do that, you need to be informed about all the different things that are going on.
Right.
I don't think this is probably the setting to get into specific, periodicals or things I listen to. But I would say if somebody's really eager, there are what they call think tanks out there, and they all have podcasts and they all have journals. I will say I think this is a reasonable one. If War on the Rocks. So the War on the Rocks is it's a think tank, and they put together a lot of wide political variety, articles and journals, and also podcasts that get after kind of what's happening, what's going on around the world, how international relations, security strategy, and all those things kind of interplay. So that's important to be up to speed on all those things, so that what I do as a chaplain, right, I can be informed by these things and then bring in, especially when you start talking about military ethics, just war, and those types of things.
Okay. Now, just a couple more things before we get out of here. The military does an amazing job at recognizing and awarding soldiers for their contributions. Tell us about some of the medals that you have been awarded while in service. While in service, yeah.
Yeah. So this is the one thing that I think, if you're out there and you're thinking about becoming a chaplain and you have discerned the call, understand that when you get into this setting, there is a time when you have to love yourself a little bit and promote yourself. All right. And so one of those times is in your annual review, right? And what's called your OER, your Officer Evaluation Report. You kind of have to make sure that everybody knows all the good things you did in the year, so that, and then there's also awards, which are it's a big thing, but it's not just big for the person who receives it. It's telling the Army story. It's not, an award isn't given just because you did something great. It's because what you did, we want to make sure we replicate and continue doing.
Gotcha.
That's why the Army does what it does when it gives out meritorious service medals and legions of merit, right? There's something that we want to make sure that we continue to do. That's why we amplify the Medal of Honor so much, because those people did something that we say a human being did that. You can have a love for self, a love for country, and love for others that would inform you to be able to do that as well. So after my time over at the USARL, the United States Army Institute for Religious Leadership, I was awarded one of the higher branch awards for the chaplain branch, and that's the Order of Martin or Tours.
Okay.
If you want to, Saint Martin is kind of the story behind that is where we get the name chaplain from.
Okay.
It's basically on a coat he wore. But anyway, so we have a branch award that that's called the Order of Martin or Tours, and it was very humbling that I was even considered, but that I was given that. So that's one of my that's one I hold in high regard. Yeah.
Good deal. If somebody is interested in learning more about Army chaplaincy, where can they go to find more information, or how could they? Is there anybody who you know that they can reach out to?
Yeah, so definitely, if they're listening to this, then definitely go to the Facebook page for the 3rd Medical Recruiting Battalion.
Okay.
All right. That's going to get you where you need to go to find our chaplain recruiting station.
Okay.
So the folks at the 3rd Medical Recruiting Battalion are going to be the subject matter experts to get you where you need to go.
Gotcha.
I think going that route's the best route. Contacting anybody, put something in the chat, and we'll get you where you need to go. And now, if they're across the United States and maybe not in the 3rd Medical Recruiting Battalion area, we'll get you where you need to go, right? There's going to be somebody we can get you to talk to. If you're looking for, if you just want to say, what is the Chaplain Corps doing, and the different things that it's doing, and you can go to Facebook and look up Army Chaplain Corps, and there's a Facebook page that the Chief of Chaplain's office puts out, and all the different things that the Army is doing. And then the other thing is goarmy.com/chaplain, and that'll give you some overall information. But I would highly encourage, if you go there, before you do anything else, come back to Facebook or come back to any contact information for the 3rd Medical Recruiting Battalion, 3rd Medical Recruiting Battalion, and get with somebody there, and we'll get you to the right spot.
And my last question, what is next for Chaplain Schultz within the military and after retirement?
Oh, that's a great question. So I can tell you, after retirement, I'm going to go back to the church, and I'm going to be a pastor of a church somewhere.
Okay.
That's what I do. It's what I'm passionate about. Now I might do it in a little less setting, maybe 2nd or 3rd pastor down the line. Somebody else can take care of all the meetings and all that stuff. I'll just I'll go on the shut-in visits and do all those things. I used to love shut-in visits, by the way. I had this older lady in my church that she was from Great Britain, and every time I visited her, she had cookies and tea.
Oh yeah,
yeah, it was great. So anyway. I think, for retirement, for what's next for me, for my next position, I don't know right now. Right. We'll find out in another year. And, but as for now, give it my all here in this place, because this is a great place to be.
Well, good. Well, Chaplain Schultz, thank you for your time. Thank you for coming out and telling your story on the AMEDD Effect Podcast. Is there anything else that you would like to leave out there for those listeners and viewers before we leave? No,
Will. Hey, I just want to commend you and the team for all you're doing with this. This is great. Getting the word out, being creative, and putting those things out there that are important to what it is we're doing. I mean, sharing the message, sharing our story, and I think if I was going to drive something home to anybody, we all have skin. We're all people. You see this uniform? It's just a uniform. It's clothes on top of a human body. Mm-hmm. It takes human beings to do what we do, and that's what we're looking for, right? We're looking for passionate human beings who want to be skilled at their craft, and as I said before, who want to save life, right? That's what we do. And I commend that to whoever's listening.
So if you guys are listening, make sure that you go check out those Facebook pages, check out the website that Chaplain Schultz talked about, and come on in, get some more information and gain some more knowledge about Army chaplaincy. Thank you all for listening to the podcast. Again, I'm your host, Will Cunningham, and this is the AMEDD Effect. The causes and effects of Army medical opportunities are endless. When you join the U.S. Army Medical Department, not only will you get more out of your medical career, but you will also provide meaningful service to soldiers, their families, military retirees, and last but not least, your country. To learn more about AMEDD, visit goarmy.com/AMEDD. That's goarmy.com/AMEDD. And if you're looking for information on tuition assistance, visit goarmy.com/HPSP. That's goarmy.com/HPSP.